So here we have Daniel Greene's top 10 Wheel of Time characters, a video I have been asked to do several times, and I'm excited to do it. Do it! Now, the criteria for me picking these characters are essentially which characters had the most emotional impact on me as the reader. So, of course, this list is very subjective, as all top 10 character lists will be for any series. And which characters help the Wheel of Time stand out within the fantasy genre by having unique twists and angles to them that are just fascinating upon rereads and deeper dives to talk about and discuss. In addition to that, of course, just who's awesome characters that are well fleshed out and all the standard stuff. But I just wanted to note those two things as well, because I weighted those two factors fairly heavily. Enough preamble, let's get into the list. At number 10, we have probably my most controversial pick for this list, in terms of being on it, not ranking. And that would be Gilad. Gilad is a love him or hate him character, for a good reason. He is a moral, just righteous person who is constantly preaching about people needing to behave a certain way and dedicate their lives to fighting the shadow, obeying the rules. He'll even tattle on his siblings and his kids. He's that guy. He's the kid in your elementary school class who would just tattle on you and you hated him. That being said, he at least walks the talk that he preaches, which alone is fairly interesting. A lot of the times in fantasy, it's typical to have these moral absolutists to actually be corrupt and follow that typical character line. That's not what Gilad does. He actually follows this moral level he sets for others to a very strict degree. On top of that, it doesn't limit his character, meaning he doesn't get involved in violence or things like that. No, Gilad's an incredible swordsman, one of the best in the entire Wheel of Time world. And he'll kill a lot. Gilad kills a lot. For non-magic users, I think he has like one of the higher kill counts for the Wheel of Time series. I haven't counted, but he massacres single-handedly several times.
Oh boy, here I go killing again.
And has some fairly skilled opponents he's defeated as well. I personally really wanted to see him go up against Perrin, but we didn't get that. That would have been awesome. I wanted to see that, but they're both. It would have been out of character for them to fight. I get why it couldn't happen, but it would have been cool. But that is pretty much why Gilad makes the top 10 list for me. He has a well-rounded character. He's understandable, while also being an extreme example of what a person could be. It's rare to find someone in the real world who preaches this kind of level of zealot devotion to a certain lifestyle, but also follows it in an uncorrupt way, and is an interesting character with a fairly strong personality. He's not just some annoying dude bro constantly preaching verses from whatever at you. No, he's well-rounded. He's neat. I like him. And the more I read Wheel of Time, the more interested I am in the layers to his character that you can kind of peel back and see more too. At number 9, we have the bad boy of the light, who has one of the best background character arcs throughout the entire story, and that's Loghain. Loghain very rarely takes the forefront of the reader's perspective. We're almost never following his POV, and we're really learning about how he is as a character and how he's evolving through conversations he has with the people who we are following. The couple times we do enter his mind, it's captivating. Loghain is someone who, upon rereads, and I'm going to say that word a lot in this video, gets more and more interesting. It's also fascinating for Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson to execute a character almost entirely in the background. Keep in mind how early on in the series we are introduced to the concept of Loghain, and then we actually meet him, and he begins to evolve, and he doesn't go the typical revenge route, instead actually evolving and coming into his own in a fully glorified path. He's not just, I gotta go get revenge, though he is that at the beginning. He's smarter than that. He grows beyond it, and he's too mature to be consumed by his rage. And he focuses that energy on helping the Black Tower reach its full potential and being engaged with one of the most intense conflicts in the entire series, the battle for the Black Tower. On concept of having him in the background doing all this alone, he earns a spot on this list for me, but it's also his personality and relationships with others, and how we as the reader get to see how others view him through the perspectives of several Ashaman, that I really like how he subtly grows. Loghain has a very serious presence to us as the reader that's very effective at making him feel ominous and somehow just deeply layered. This is first apparent when we even just see him at the beginning of the series make eye contact with Rand almost across an entire city. From there, it only grows and gets layers added onto it, and almost nothing stripped away in a negative way as we get to know him throughout the more time we spend with him in the series. He's fascinating, and if you haven't reread the series and you're going to, I recommend paying close attention to Loghain, because boy oh boy is he's an interesting fella. At number 9, we got a personal favorite of mine, and that's Tom Marilyn. I've made it abundantly clear on my channel that I love Tom, and if I'm trying to be objective for this list, I can't put him as high as I'd quite like because, well, I find him to be overwhelmingly charming and just lends so much emotional weight to the early parts of the series, has one of the best mini arcs at the first third of the series, and helps our main trio of boys really evolve into men. He lends so much. His influence and presence is felt from the first book to the final. I really like seeing the tinges of Tom that show up in the three boys as the series goes on. Mostly Matt and Rand, Perrin much less so, if at all, but he was an effective father figure to them, and that is a nice little thing to see his influences and his teachings still echo with a dragon who is off fighting the shadow, a humble little gleeman, shaped and changed the world for just being skilled, awesome, not so humble, and just genuinely nice. Plus, the mini arc with his love interest, well, super short, just emotional gut punch. Something about old people being sad really gets to me every time. At number 7, we have the most complex villain the Wheel of Time has to offer, and debatably one of the greatest of the fantasy genre, and that is Moradin, Elon, Ishamael, whichever one you want to call him. He transforms literally and metaphorically in extreme ways throughout the series, while being first introduced as a madman, a presence that is unchecked and unleashed by the shadow, to a revived, much more controlled, cold, calculating philosopher who echoes back to who he really was in the Age of Legends. Moradin's intimidation comes from everything from his ideology to his power. He joined the shadow out of a logical line of reasoning that we as the reader can't wholly disagree with. That's honestly really bold to put in as an author. That kind of, he's right, he's not wrong. The wheel's gonna turn again, but it's more than just a ideology that you can get behind here. He has one of the meatiest characters of any of the villains, argued in personality probably only by Lanfear or Padon Fane, though Padon Fane's character is more of just a caricature at certain points, which isn't inherently negative. It adds a lot of personality, but it's not as deep as maybe a more nuanced villain like Moradin is. And that nuance plays a very large role into why he feels so intimate with the reader. There's small things that just build with his character, and I'm going to focus more on the latter half of the series here because, while his first incarnation as Ishamael has one hell of a presence, we honestly think he is the Dark One for a good portion of the series. That's not where my real favor towards him comes from. I love his shadowing and echoing of Rand. It almost feels like a what could have been if Rand just went a little bit different, or Lews Therin just went a little more different. And Moradin's existence and presence also feels like a connecting conduit between Rand and Lews Therin in a very intimate way. He somehow bridges that gap by knowing both intimately, fighting both, and treating them as one individual. It's fascinating. It's this whole layered, nuanced relationship that enhances our main character and just lends a lot of credence to this guy being one of the biggest, baddest boys in the yard. Plus, he's very powerful, and, explosions and stuff. That's cool. At number 6, we probably have my first really controversial positioning, and that's going to be Perrin. I know a lot of people would put him up in the top 3 as well as 2 other picks, and I get that. I like Perrin a lot. I'm putting him above several other magnificent characters, but Perrin's hard to follow at times because he feels like he's taking a long time to complete a much simpler character path than a lot of the other characters we're following. Rand and Matt especially, to contrast easily with Perrin because they're the 3 boys, go through several arcs as well as an overarching one that helps the pace of the entire story. Perrin just feels like he has one longer arc and he's fighting the same internal conflicts again and again and again without ever really moving past them. Now, while this is never flat out boring to me or anything on those negative lines, I really do love following Perrin. I wish he had had more side plots to help the pacing of his story move along. His story is largely responsible for the slog, and a lot of those events could have been, I feel, wrapped up and condensed a little bit sooner. I still do love him, though. He has an amazing depth of personality. He's one of the people in the series who has some of the best friendships, which is something I really look for in a fantasy series. Authors don't typically put a lot of depth into friendships as they do like romances, but Perrin has legitimate friends that have real back and forth and dynamic to how they treat each other. I love that. And some of them are freaking wolves, so, that's amazing. Perrin is also one of the bigger catalysts for us expanding the Wheel of Time and coming into deeper understandings of the magic system. And anyone who can help bridge that gap for the reader while also having a wonderful story being told, which Perrin's is still wonderful while being maybe not as well paced, is going to get bonus points for me, because it never felt like exposition dumps. It felt like the natural exploring of a farm boy entering something otherworldly. Let's leave it at that. At number 5, we have a character that you, the audience, have drastically changed my opinion on. I still have some problems with them, but I also have mad respect for her and her level of depth and nuance. And that, of course, is the Amyrlin seat, Egwene Alvear. And the previous praise I gave to Perrin of being a catalyst to exploring the wider world, I can give to Egwene tenfold. Well, at first she's helping us, the reader, explore concepts like Saidar. She later takes up the majority of the weight in exploring the world of dreams, as well as several cultural dives that we go through while her arc is continuing on. We explore the Seanchan with her in a very intimate and disturbing tale as she is abused and really baptized into their culture. We then flip that and go with her into the Aiel Waste. While Rand is certainly learning about them, Egwene fully experiences Aiel culture and embraces it as almost superior to her own, eagerly training with the wise ones and just enjoying who the Aiel people are, and really allowing us, the reader, a window into this world that feels more up close and personal than almost any other character gives us, even the actual Aiel we follow, because there's not really a need for an Aiel we're following to explain the culture. With Egwene, it comes naturally, and we can just experience this world as the reader. On top of that, she's a great character. Her arc is phenomenal, and while I've seen the accusation of Mary Sue thrown against her several times, and I'm not fully going to disagree with that, there are certain power jumps for her that I don't wholly agree with. I don't mean power physically, I mean in status. I think they are justified enough with suspension of disbelief that we can fully buy her going into the situation she is. Her conflict with the White Tower, while very long, is one of the most continually engaging from beginning to end. It wasn't until my third reread that I, as the reader, really identified just how huge and how much of the series the Tower conflict takes up, and how much of it is carried on Egwene's shoulders as a wonderful character, and through her relationships with people you wouldn't at the beginning of the series expect her to have a relationship with, like the former Amyrlin seat, Swan Shanche. One of the best friendships in the series, no doubt. I do give a lot of points for friendship. It just helps me as the reader get more invested in the story, and is great to read when there's actual dynamics between certain people playing off each other. And major spoiler alert, if you've been kind of just hanging on and hoping I don't spoil very end of series stuff, that's stopping at any chance right now. I know I put a spoiler warning at the beginning, but seriously, leave now if you have not already. She also goes out with one of the biggest bangs of any character I have seen in fantasy, period. Her death has incredible emotional weight, massive world-shifting implications, and without it, the Shadow could have arguably won. So hands down, kudos, hats off. I love her arc. Seeing a farm girl go to the most powerful person in the world, second arguably only to Rand al'Thor, is stunning. And I think anyone who has a deep understanding of Wheel of Time, while you may not love her character like I am slowly coming to more and more every time I reread certain parts of Wheel of Time, you have to at least respect the overall story told through her. It's wonderful. Next up, we have another one coming from the Two Rivers, and that would be Nynaeve. It's easy to write off Nynaeve and hate her, but the more you look, the closer you identify her motivations and why she acts the way she does, why she behaves so drastically and honestly harshly at times, the more human she becomes. I personally find that Nynaeve's greatest motivation is an incredibly powerful protection instinct for people she helps raise and love. She really struggles with stopping seeing the farm boys she helped raise as not the farm boys she helped raise. So of course, even though they have powerful positions later on, she's still going to talk to them a certain way and try to help temper their egos and be very afraid to see them go into the situations they seem to bull rush into at times. This motivation comes even clearer when you look at her driving passion to learn to heal. This fear extends to the point where it's influencing what she wants to learn to channel. Nynaeve wants to be able to heal, protect, and save everyone, something I relate to because of some life stuff very intimately, and I enjoy that about her oh so much. She also has, in my opinion, the best romance in the entire series with Lan. It doesn't feel childish and obnoxious at times or anything like that. There's no one in the relationship who's annoying or insecure. It's just a loving, healthy adult relationship with Lan, and Goals. Especially in my last time really diving in deeply to Wheel of Time and rereading major parts, I found myself understanding why Nynaeve struggles so much to move past the Two Rivers wisdom in the beginning, why once she lets that position go, she evolves so quickly, and honestly, in conclusion, why she's right a majority of the time. Yes, there are a few standout instances where other characters were arguably in the right, but Nynaeve, don't discredit her advice. Ever. There is also an ego problem with her, which is again something I can relate to from earlier parts of my life, and I enjoy seeing her at the end of the series finally being able to metaphorically and literally bend the knee to Egwene and say, yes, you are my Amerlin, and I will serve for you, was something that cannot be easy for the character we are introduced at the beginning of the series to do, but she does with grace, and it's a really fantastic end to that struggle that is then not as present. And of course, I can't stop talking about Nynaeve without mentioning the fact that she solves two of the biggest world problems in the Wheel of Time, both of which, like, kind of nonchalantly, so that's amazing. She fixes Stilling and starts healing madness. She's up there with Rand for me in terms of world influence with that alone. Just saying. With a few more decades of experience under her belt, I really see Nynaeve almost having the level of just presence that someone like Cadsuane already does in the series. Upon some rereads, anyone who only read the series once, I think will start to appreciate her more. Picking up book 1 and seeing her in the Two Rivers again can almost be jarring, but it also recontextualizes that initial struggle, seeing where she ends up, and you start to appreciate it a lot more. At number 3, we have the Gambler, the Smiling Man, the Great General, so many other things.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
We got Matt Coffin. We all love Matt. So much can be said about him, but really what I want to talk about most is execution of character personality. For the first couple books, Matt doesn't have much presence because of obvious reasons, things that are happening with him with Pointy Dagger Ruby thing. But once that is turned off and we get to fully experience the presence that is Matt, the Wheel of Time benefits as a whole, and I don't think the series would be as good without that presence, because holy bejesus, it's a trope almost having this rogue Ragscallion. He's the Han Solo type with a little bit more childish prankiness thrown in, but it's just done so freaking well. And I'm going to hit a note that I've hit with previous characters before, but all the stronger, probably the strongest here, Matt shines the most through his friendships. Whether it's with Brigitte, Perrin, Rand, Moraine, Elaine, Egwene, Nynaeve, Matt's personality is proven and his character is proven. And I mean character as in, like, you know, his reliability and goodness as a person through how he treats his friends. Matt will ride or die for anybody that he loves. And that's amazing. He's willing to climb into the Stone of Tyr. He's willing to go into another dimensional weird tower place, anything to help those he loves. And his relationship with Tom is my personal favorite. The way he helps pick up Tom and get him back on his feet very subtly, but not taking no for an answer. You helped me, I will help you. That's not even mentioning the incredible power set that's fairly unique for the fantasy genre, the going up against some of the biggest, baddest baddies the Shadow has to offer, and having real stakes, it feels like. It felt like Matt could die several times, and just holding it out all the way through, being a bridge into the Shan-Chan. I wasn't the biggest fan of his romance, but it was still good, and just adding layer and layer to the person that is underneath that hat. Matt is brilliant. I can't stop praising him enough. I really do just love Matt. I want to get drunk with him. I want to go gamble with him. Let's go do stuff, my dude. At number 2, we have Moraine. And I know some people would not put her so high, but for me, you'd be foolish not to, because talk about introducing a world, and not just introducing any fantasy world, introducing one of the largest, most complex, brilliantly put together fantasy worlds ever made. Moraine does all of this while shining through as a character. Basically, she's a person who builds the world without it feeling like just dull exposition dumps. Whether it's her speech in the Two Rivers about Manetherin, or her teaching the girls to channel, engagement with Rand, helping him come to terms with the fact that he is the dragon, constant background influence, advice, massive sacrifice, the return presence. She had the hardest job of the entire series, which is help us, the reader, get introduced to this world. Not only is that done pretty much perfectly, but she has one of the most nuanced, subtly delivered to us histories as a character, period. Rivaled only by possibly Tom in terms of just subtly learning about what exactly his past is and what builds them to be who they are. If you don't just love Moraine, I don't know how we can talk about Wheel of Time, because everything she lends to the series is a positive. There was not one scene with her that did not feel like it was enhancing the overall experience of Wheel of Time. And while being this evolution of Gandalf that's constantly giving out phenomenal advice and is never wholly wrong, she still feels unbelievably human. There's flaws to the character underneath that, as the reader, become more apparent, but instead of detracting to your love for her, it makes her more believable and understandable throughout the series. She, again, is afraid. If she fails, that's it. The world's done.
Everybody's gonna die.
Oh my God. Talk about the weight of the world on your shoulders. She metaphorically has that, and she manages to be graceful and badass throughout. And of course, number one, without a doubt, it's Oliver. No, it's Randall Thor. Randall Thor, the Dragon Reborn, number one. Probably the best character development that I can think of ever being put to page. Having a farm boy evolve into a demigod, which is probably the best way to put it, and it's believable. He goes through insanity cycles, he goes through depression, anxiety, mentally just broken at times, and it's never just snap fixed. It's always a believable step forward. Sometimes babies, sometimes lunges, but it makes sense in the context of the series. He also has wonderful friendships, but his duty comes first. There's this feeling of sorrow and sadness that permeates Rand's story and is so well done. It gives me chills and goosebumps. He was clearly Robert Jordan's baby in terms of how much care, time, and effort was put into every major and minor character choice put forth for Rand. But the result, in my opinion, is not only the best character in all of fantasy, but arguably one of the best characters in media? I don't want to say literature, because it's bigger than that. I love Rand. I love Robert Jordan's character work, man. And these were just the top 10, and it's not like after here it drops off. Almost everybody has such flair and nuance, from Barrelane to Loyal. It's why we love the Wheel of Time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and let me know your top 10 list, of course, in the comments down below. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. Special shout out to Chris Haggins, I believe you pronounce it. I really appreciate you supporting the channel, and your name sounds like it should be in a fantasy book. I'm just saying, your last name's awesome. All right, have a good one, y'all. Peace.